Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you, buddy. Proceed.
So if I could just talk to you for a minute about the flu vaccine. The flu vaccine happens to be the vaccine that causes the most injury in this country. Senator Romano, the Vaccine Injury Compensation Program, 40% of all vaccinations in this country are flu shots. But 60% of all the compensations are for the flu vaccine. So a disproportionate number of the vaccine-related injuries are the flu shot. It's been recommended to you that you get the flu shot, but I don't know if you're aware of the fact the CDC statistics are that every year they look at vaccine effectiveness. For this particular year, the vaccine effectiveness is 48%. Look at the scientific literature on the Cochrane database. They say the evidence to support giving the flu vaccine is moderate to weak. It is not strong evidence. They say the evidence to support giving the flu vaccine to people over the age of 65 is not there. It's inconclusive. So a lot of the things that we've been told as Americans with regard to vaccination are not really based on the science.
So a lot of the things that we've been told as Americans with regard to vaccination are not really based on the science.
I don't want physicians, I don't think it's right that physicians should be forcing patients to receive a vaccine that potentially could have severe injuries when the person is healthy. I mean, what is so sad is somebody who's healthy, and I know an employee at Jefferson Medical Center up in Pennsylvania who got Guillain-Barré as a result of a flu shot that the hospital required her to get when she was perfectly healthy and then had a 9-month illness before she recovered. That was not her choice. Guess what? Jefferson Medical Center no longer requires flu shots.
My name is Judy A. Mikovits. I'm a PhD biochemist and molecular biologist, and my job was to make the first interferon alpha, the first immune therapy. Basically, the realization, the big oh my God, of all of those sequences we've seen and all of those proteins and all of these contaminants are causing disease. 25 million Americans are infected with the viruses that came out of the lab, out of labs into humans via contaminated blood and vaccines. November 18, 2011, I refused to denounce the data. I refused to say it was a mistake. We had the data. I showed the data. I showed all of the data. And I just refused. They basically said, tell everybody you made it all up and you can go home. And if you don't, we'll destroy you. And they did. Thank God for my faith and for my husband and for my family and for the patients. My passion wasn't money. Scientists don't make money. My passion was helping people, and the patients never walked away from me. So in 2011, another AIDS researcher in a journal called Frontiers in Microbiology wrote a paper, basically said the most likely way that these murine leukemia virus-related viruses, these types of viruses, entered humans was through vaccines. What we were doing to attenuate, to make the virus less pathogenic, less toxic, is we were passing them through mouse brains. So we were passing them through the brains of mice, and every scientist who works with these viruses and worked at the National Cancer Institute recognized the possibility that if you put human tissue and mouse tissue together, the possibility is that you're going to pick up a virus that is silent in the mouse. That is, it doesn't hurt the mouse, but it kills the human or causes serious disease in the human. We live in a society where we're bombarded with commercials, big pharma, so they give you all the warning on Opdivo, the immune therapy that's a new chance for new life. And when you look at the little picture at the bottom, it says they live 12 months versus the 9 months of the control. Vaccines don't have to be made or regulated like drugs. They're biologics. They're given a free pass. There's a vaccine court. You can't sue the doctor. You can't sue the manufacturer. There's a federal court that oversees vaccine injury, and it's more corrupt than anything you could ever imagine. And so they do everything they can to keep the public from knowing that every single shot damages you, and you might not see the cancer for 2 decades. That's the very first thing. If we lived a biblical life, but also a biblical life is render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. That's money. They could have all my money. They don't have any right to inject anything I don't want injected into my body. So to live a healthy life, prevent anyone from forcing you to take toxic drugs. How are we brainwashed in our society? We need to turn off these TVs. You know, a big pharma owns the media. Our politicians, we need to dig deeper. We need to look in the truth. We need to start reading books again. Our book, Plague, is at plaguethebook.com. You can listen to it. You don't have to read it. You can read a chapter at a time, or not just my book, but Dr. Suzanne Humphrey's Dissolving Illusions and Rising from the Dead, a brilliant, prominent internist, and the whole dumbing down. We've made our doctors our gods.
We've made our doctors our gods.
There's a lot of safety science that's needed. It absolutely needs the science as the backbone. You can't repurpose the same old science to make it sound better if you don't have the science that's relevant to the new problems. So we need much more investment in safety science.
I think we cannot overemphasize the fact that we really don't have very good safety monitoring systems in many countries, and we're not able to give clear-cut answers when people ask questions about the deaths that have occurred due to a particular vaccine, and this always gets blown up in the media. One should be able to give a very factual account of what exactly has happened and what the cause of deaths are. But in most cases, there's some obfuscation at that level, and therefore there's less and less trust then in the system.
Every time that there is an association, be it temporal or not temporal, the first accusation is it is the adjuvant. So the challenge that we have in front of us is how do we build confidence in this? And the confidence, first of all, comes from the regulatory agencies, to Marianne. When we add an adjuvant, it's because it is essential. We do not add adjuvants to vaccines because we want to do so. But when we add them, it adds to the complexity. And I give courses every year on how do you develop vaccines, how do you make vaccines? And the first lesson is, while you're making your vaccine, if you can avoid using an adjuvant, please do so. Lesson 2 is, if you're going to use an adjuvant, use one that has a history of safety. And lesson 3 is, if you're not going to do that, think very carefully. The major health concern which we are seeing are accusations of long-term effects.
One of the additional issues that complicates safety evaluation is if you look at and you struggle with the length of follow-up that should be adequate in a, let's say, pre-licensure or even post-marketing study, if that's even possible. And again, as you mentioned, pre-licensure clinical trials may not be powered enough. So these are things which need to be considered as well and further complicate safety and effectiveness evaluation of adjuvants combined with vaccine.
I cast back my mind to our situation in Nigeria, where at 6 weeks, 10 weeks, 14 weeks, a child is being given different antigens from different companies. And these vaccines have different adjuvants, different preservatives, and so on. Have there ever been a study on the possibility of cross-reactions from the panel members that you can share the experience with us?
The other thing that's a trend and an issue is not just confidence in providers, but confidence of healthcare providers. We have a very wobbly health professional front line that is starting to question vaccines and the safety of vaccines.
Health professional front line that is starting to question vaccines and the safety of vaccines.
When the frontline professionals are starting to question, or they don't feel like they have enough confidence about the safety to stand up to it to the person asking them the questions. I mean, most medical school curriculums, even nursing curriculums, I mean, in medical school, you're lucky if you have a half day on vaccines, never mind keeping up to date with all this.
In medical school, you're lucky if you have a half day on vaccines.
What is not widely known, and in fact what the function of this hearing is about, and I hope to do my best with the help of my fellow senators and members of this panel, is to start focusing attention on the third leading cause of death in the United States of America. And that will come as a great surprise to most people. And the third leading cause of death in this country has to do with preventable medical errors in hospitals. A recent article published in the Journal of Patient Safety estimates that as many as 440,000 people a year may die from preventable medical errors in hospitals. 440,000 a year. That's could be more than 1,000 a day.
I speak today on behalf of hundreds of thousands of Americans whose voices have been silenced forever by preventable adverse medical events.
The fundamental question is, if I walk into an American hospital today, am I demonstrably, clearly safer than I would have been 15 years ago? The unfortunate answer is no.
While the subcommittee is to be commended for tackling this challenging issue, I believe that the title understates the problem. We are not only dealing with 1,000 preventable deaths a day, but 1,000 preventable deaths and 10,000 preventable serious complications a day.
People who are harmed lose their jobs. They lose their homes. They lose their health insurance. Many go bankrupt trying to pay the medical bills that they would not have had they not been harmed by the healthcare provider they sought help from. These are very real consequences of the failure to take action to eliminate medical errors. They are our sisters and brothers, parents and children, and they are disabled, and many of them are dead because of these events.
Many of us, myself included, have seen folks go into a hospital for one problem or another and end up coming out a lot sicker than when they went in, and in some cases dying as a result. How come this story is not on the front pages of the papers every single day?